Hello friends, welcome back to the shop. Today is Sunday, January 7th, and it is a snowy day here in eastern Pennsylvania. We got our first significant snowfall of the year, certainly, but also of the winter yesterday. It wasn't much, it was only about 3 inches, but enough to have to break out the shovels and whatnot. And started snowing again this morning around 9 o'clock. It's about 10:30 now. And yeah, we'll see where that gets us. But winter has to come before the spring. So today I am smoking my Rick Black mortar pipe, and I'm really loving this pipe. This is my first mortar, and I've had it for months now. I don't know exactly how long. And I can honestly recommend the mortar. It's a different smoking experience. There's no question about it. But it's a very good quality pipe, and I like it. It smokes clean. Similar in a lot of ways to briar, but also different enough that it's worth having at least one of these in your rotation. And the topic I'd like to talk about today is what I'm smoking in the pipe, which is, I don't know if you can see this or not, but it's the number 10 Downing Street that I talked about. I don't remember if it was last week or the week before. This was a tobacco that Ram, Bones Pappy, and his wife Alicia were kind enough to help me source from a shop in Atlanta. And anyone that's been watching me for a while knows that number 10 Downing Street was one of my early smokes, a daily smoke for me, and I've been missing it since Lane took it out of production. And it showed up at this shop in Georgia. Now, there's a couple of possibilities here. This could be old stock number 10 Downing Street. I don't think that's the case, and as I get into talking about it more, you'll understand why I don't think that's the case. And it's been gone for quite a while. I think they stopped making it in the early 2000s, like 2004, 2005. So the odds of there still being a significant store of this somewhere is pretty low. It could also be that the shop was selling number 10 Downing Street and Lane stopped making it, so they bought the closest thing to that and labeled it number 10 Downing Street and continued to sell it. Because we know that many of the blends that we see at brick and mortars are actually relabeled Lane blends, and so that's a possibility as well. I don't think that's the case because I have actually tried just about every Lane. I think I tried every Lane mild English to try to figure out if there was something close to number 10 Downing Street, and this is different from that. I haven't had anything quite like this, so I don't think this is a relabeled Lane product, and I'll talk more about that. The other possibility is that Lane, at least the rumor is that Lane will sometimes release some things locally just to see how they go, or just because they've made a batch and can sell it at a local shop, that would not get released broadly. And that, I think, is a very good possibility. I know back when they reintroduced Crown Achievement, they were thinking, they were trying to decide between number 10 Downing Street and Crown Achievement, maybe one or two others. So they may have made up a batch of it for testing, and that's how it wound up. So I don't know exactly what this is, but I can tell you, so the question is it the number 10 Downing Street that I used to smoke? And the answer to that, and you've heard me say this before about tobaccos that are being resurrected, is that I have no idea. I remember smoking number 10, and I remember what the experience was like, but I can't say that my memory is 100% accurate. And having not had it in so long, I would imagine that I'm somewhat embellishing the memory. And I think even if I had a pouch of number 10 that, if I found one that I had bought back in early 2000, I may not recognize it because my tastes have changed. But I can say that this is pretty darn close. It's about the closest that I've found, with maybe one exception that I'll talk about. So, what number 10 was a pretty basic, mild English that was composed predominantly of burley and black Cavendish, and then it had some Virginia and relatively mild dose of Latakia. And I liked it. I like Latakia as a condiment. I like the effect it has on tobaccos, especially in colder weather. I think it's quite nice. But I'm not one of these guys that just craves massive quantities of Latakia. I find most Latakia blends today to be very monotone, very bland, very tangy and tart, and the smokiness is there, but I just don't find most English blends that people get excited about these days to be worth smoking, to be frank. And that's my opinion. I'm not trying to say that if you smoke those you're wrong. I just, for my palate, they just don't do it for me, and we're all different, and we all like different things. So what I remember about the number 10 back in the day was that it had a very noticeable amount of Latakia, but it wasn't overpowering. And it was a very smooth blend. So there wasn't the sort of tart edge that I get from a lot of Latakia blends. You'd think that by now I'd be better at talking and keeping the pipe lit, but I'm not. So what I can say about this particular incarnation of number 10, regardless of its true origins, is that it comes very, very close, but it does have that tart edge, which I thought was kind of interesting. And it got me thinking about how tobaccos change with time, and how our palates change in time as well. And Latakia is an interesting beast. For those of you that don't know, it's a tobacco that's processed in a very unique way, where it's cured over a smoky fire, and the various woods that go into that fire change the characteristics of the Latakia quite a bit. And it also is grown in at least two places. There's a Syrian Latakia and a Cyprian Latakia. And the Syrian Latakia has been very difficult to get, and may in fact be impossible to get now. I mean, there are some blenders that have stockpiles of it that are still in existence, but I think for a multitude of reasons there is just simply no more Syrian Latakia that you can buy from a grower or a processor to add into blends. Part of that is due to politics and war and all the issues in Syria. The other part is that actually before all of that, there was concern about the effects that the processing of Latakia was having on the forest in Syria, because they were consuming an awful lot of wood to make the fires to cure the tobacco, and that was causing some cut in production as well. And there's a couple of really good articles on Latakia by Greg Pease, Mr. Pease of GLP, or GLPs, and I will link to one of those down below if you're interested in reading more about this, in particular about the Syrian versus Cyprian Latakias. Now, the interesting thing is that so when I realized that this still had that tart edge, I thought, aha, it's the Latakia, because they can no longer get Syrian and they're using Cyprian, and that would therefore explain the difference. Well, unfortunately, that didn't hold up very well, because, at least according to Mr. Pease's article, it's the exact opposite. The Syrian was actually the more sharp, tangy Latakia, and the Cyprian is the smoother, sweeter of the group. So that's not the difference, and that means that the difference might in fact be me. Now, the other unique thing about number 10 Downing Street, other than the light Latakia and the fact that it was a burley-based English, was the use of Cavendish. And in fact, the black Cavendish was probably the predominant component in the tobacco. And Cavendish is an interesting blending tobacco to me. I've smoked black Cavendish on its own. I actually have some C&D black Cavendish right here. And when I smoke this, it's like smoking hot air. There's absolutely no flavor to me, to my palate, with black Cavendish. Yet it is unmistakable when it's in a blend, because it does a wonderful job of just smoothing out the blend and binding the components together that I wish I understood better, because it's really remarkable how just a touch of black Cavendish can really transform things. So I thought maybe that was the difference. And the reason I have this is I've been playing with adding black Cavendish to various Englishes and Lane mild Englishes in particular, to try and recreate that experience. And I'm not doing this because I'm, desperately seeking this tobacco. I'm doing it because I'm interested in better understanding how the tobaccos work together and how my palate has changed, and that's really the main reason. So I have here, now this is not a mild Lane English. This is Lane BS 005, which actually has a pretty hefty dose of Latakia in it. And I've been adding black Cavendish to this to try to balance that out and see what effect it has, and see if it smooths out that tartness that I was talking about. So I'm currently at 50-50 with this. So it's 50% black Latakia, 50% BS5. And it certainly has changed the blend, but it has not gotten rid of that tartness that I was talking about. Now, the one thing that this still lacks is burley. I can't imagine that the burley is going to transform it that significantly in terms of tartness, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to add some burley to this and see where it gets me. But it's just a fun little side project. The other thing that I've done is compare this to a number of other similar blends. So as I said, I have smoked through a lot of the Lane mild Englishes and haven't found anything to match. The one thing that has been talked about is Lane HGL, and I have some HGL here. This was some HGL that Bonapiper Christian was kind enough to send to me, and this is a very nice tobacco, and I'm going to talk about this more in February for reasons that will become obvious in February. But it's not what I'm smoking right now, and it's not the original number 10 Downing Street either. Another one that I tried was this little guy here. So Walnut was often compared to number 10 Downing Street, and of course Walnut is also no longer available. This was a very precious sample of Walnut that I was fortunate enough to win in a giveaway that was sponsored by the Artful Cotcher. And I recently just had a bit of this actually in a clay pipe to try to really be able to focus just on the taste of the tobacco. And I can tell you that this was a wonderful blend. This was very much in the vein of the number 10 Downing Street that I'm trying to recreate. And yeah, it's a darn shame that this is no longer available. The Latakia in this is exactly what I'm looking for. And again, that makes me think that maybe there's something about the Latakia that's different. Although it may not be the Cyprian thing, it may be the way the Latakia is processed, the woods that are used, and so on, that has changed over time. Other blends that I've smoked in this quest that have yielded somewhat interesting results. Cornell and Eels Constellation. This is a blend that's actually very, very close. It does have that tangy edge to it, but it's very close. And this is again a Cavendish dominant burley Latakia blend with a little bit of Virginia added, and one that I wanted to smoke around this time, just for comparison's sake, was the Sutliff match or Chestnut, which is the pipes and cigar match for Walnut. And unfortunately, I thought I had the Sutliff in my cellar, but I don't, so I wasn't able to smoke it very recently. But I have had it in the past. And I can tell you that it is very good, but it's not this. It's got that tart edge to it. So again, there seems to be something that has just over time changed about Latakia, or me, and I've decided that I'm probably not going to be able to complete this quest to find this flavor profile that I've missed. And you know, that's okay. I think sometimes we just need to accept that tobaccos come and go, and this is one that's gone. Having said that, this number 10 Downing Street is a very nice smoke, and I'm enjoying it. It's just not what it used to be. And in a sense, that's okay, because it is what it currently is, and that's a good thing. So to talk a little bit more directly about number 10, since I've been rambling about 30 blends now, the thing that I like the most about this particular incarnation is that you can taste the burley. It's definitely got some Virginia in it, but the burley's there right from the first light. And as you guys know, I'm quite fond of burley. The black Cavendish is doing its job of sort of smoothing and binding things together and mellowing it. And then there is just enough Latakia in there to make you get that smoky, leathery feeling, or flavor, I should say. But it's not overpowering. I think most English smokers would be disappointed in this as an English. I mean, it may be a nice change of pace for you, but if you're looking for something like Crown Achievement or I'm blanking on the names of other Englishes because I don't smoke them very often. This isn't your blend, but it's nice. I like it, and I'm very glad that I was able to try it. So, I hope you found that to be of some interest. I know it was a bit rambly, but I did want to talk in particular about the Latakia and how that may have changed over time, and also the black Cavendish and how that works in a blend. So I hope you found that enjoyable. I'll keep you updated as I continue to experiment with this guy and add some burley. But again, I'm not expecting anything magical to happen. But it's fun to do this, and you learn probably as much about yourself in terms of how you taste and experience the tobaccos as you learn about the tobaccos. So I highly recommend, if you're interested, that you pick up a few blending components. You know, this 2 ounces of black Cavendish is probably enough to keep me experimenting for years, and you know, I think it was $3 or something. So it's pretty inexpensive to do this, and it's nice to start with something like a Lane blend where it's a relatively simple. I shouldn't say it's simple, but it's not. You know, you can find out what all the components are in there, and then add things to it and try to change it and see how the tobaccos that you're adding change the profile, rather than starting from scratch with blending tobaccos and combining them, because you don't have a known base there that you're measuring differences against. So if you start with something you know, and then you add to it, you get a better understanding of what those additions are doing to the blend. Okay, well, that's probably more than enough of a ramble from me for today. I have a new pipe restoration that I'm going to be starting, and hopefully, if all goes well, you'll see the first video in that series on Wednesday. It's a pipe that a friend has asked me to work on, and it's a beautiful pipe. I'm quite excited about getting to work on that. I'll probably start that later today, and like I said, the first video should be up on Wednesday, so you can look forward to that. Beyond that, I hope you all are doing well and having a great weekend, and I will ask you all to take care of yourselves and those close to you, and I will look forward to talking to you all again very soon. Goodbye now.